Hey everyone, this is my Rimu coffee table restoration. So with this one, first of all, we're going to start off with just stripping the old finish off. It's pretty faded on the top. The side and the legs was okay, but the top was pretty faded, so it didn't need too much. Just using the Intergrain timber stripper here. You just put it on, brush it on nice and thick, leave it for 20 minutes, half an hour, come back, scrape it off. You want to get it nice and thick, just so that it can actually get into the wood and do its job. And there's Logan just coming to say hello. I like the timber strip because the cleanup's really easy. You just have to rinse the brush off with water. As I said, leave it 20 minutes, come back, scrape off the top. It's easy to have a nice little box to scrape that in just to help it clear up. This one I decided it was going to be easier to scrape and sand the tabletop whilst it was still assembled. So once you've scraped off the strip, you're just going to get your methylated spirits. Just chuck it on top and just go over with a wire wool, steel wool. Just get off that excess finish and remove any of the timber strip that's left on there. Told you I'd have gloves this week. So once that's all wiped down, just give it a dry with another rag. I'm going to try and get off all the excess moisture. And you need to leave it a little while just to completely dry out. After about half an hour, once it's completely dry, I'm just going to start sanding. Started this one, there wasn't too much damage, so I just started with a 180 grit sandpaper and just worked my way. Kind of with an orbital, you don't need to go with the grain too much, but I like to try and maintain moving the sander along the grain as I go up and down the table. You notice I won't do any of the edges with the 180. I'll wait for the 240 for that, just because you can change the shape if you're not careful. So I'll wait until I go down to the 240 before I do the edges, and then that way I've got a little bit more control. You're less likely to damage and misshape the wood. So what I did with this one, I did on the top I did 180, 240, 320. On the side I just did 180 and 240. This is how the top came up all sanded. Super nice and smooth. The Rimu grain does look really nice. So the next thing was to just take it apart. This one was just held in with some tabs underneath. So I just loosened those off, turned the tabs and the top lifted straight off, and then I was able to undo the legs and the side pieces, so that was completely stripped. My camera ran out of battery, so there's a little bit I missed. I'm just cleaning up Sarah's mess that she liked to leave down there. So repeating the process, just going ahead, stripping the finish off. The legs I actually ended up doing twice, because it's a little bit difficult to sand those legs, so it's better to get as much as I could off with the stripper. So I stripped the legs twice, which ended up making the finish a lot easier to work with. I didn't need to do as much sanding. Obviously being the round legs, it's a little bit more tedious, but with the straight flat pieces, that was really easy. I just got a bit of sandpaper on a block and just went with the grain with the 240. Wire wool really helps remove that finish on the legs, as it does act sort of like sandpaper. This is very fine. I do need to get some more coarse. That would have helped a lot as well. So this is just an example of what it's going to look like once it's finished. And it will also help clean up the table. So just pouring some methylated spirits on, you can see the colour of the wood and the grain coming out. That's just an example of how it's going to look when it's finished. So before I apply the Danish oil, I'm just going to go around and with a tack rope, which will just pick up any bits of dust and dirt that are sitting on the wood. So you're not going to have any of that sitting inside in your finish. It's not too bad with Danish oil because you put on and wipe off, but if you were applying a varnish or a clear polyurethane, it's a good habit to have. As you can see, the sides and the legs are a bit darker because they didn't have as much sanding done on them, and I think it gives it a nice tone on the wood. So the next step is to apply the Danish oil, just brushing it off, brushing it on. Again, first coat nice and thick, you'll leave it for 10 minutes, let it completely soak into the wood, and then go around with a rag and wipe off the excess. And then you're going to leave it at least 8 hours, and you're going to repeat the process, sanding with 240 in between coats. You do that 2, maybe 3 more times. With this I did 2 coats on the sides and the legs and 3 coats on the top. It's just going to give it a nice hard wearing finish, also be super smooth. You can just see the way the colour and the grain comes up when you put that Danish oil on. Now, I bought this table from the tip shop, or Trash Palace, which is where people can donate the furniture that they're going to throw away. I bought it for 35 bucks. I spent one weekend sanding it down and finishing it, and it actually sold for $125, so not a bad weekend. Rimu sells quite well over here. As you see, just wiping off that excess. So I'll leave that overnight, come back the next day, repeat the process. So here's what it's going to look like with the first coat. You can see it's nice, it has a nice matte finish, Danish oil. So once I've finished all 3 coats, I just came back, put it back together. I put a nice soft yoga mat down just to make sure I didn't damage the wood, which it didn't. So after a little bit of fiddling, I got it all lined up, tightened up with by hand so that I didn't damage anything, and then again just reassembled. Here's the finished product. Just 3 coats of Danish oil on the top, 2 coats on the side, and it just feels so nice and smooth. And there you can see the befores and the afters. Thank you very much, guys.